Today I'm going to show you how to write equations of lines using the y equals mx plus b format. When you are using the slope-intercept form, you are always going to try to find your ultimate goal of finding slope and your y-intercept. Now slope is represented with the letter m and the y-intercept is represented with the letter b. A lot of people confuse the y-intercept for the y-value. Remember that your y-intercept is only when x is 0. Sometimes we have to identify that through a series of algebraic steps. So let's get started. So given a slope and a y-intercept, it's nice and easy because you already have the pieces of the puzzle you are missing. If they say slope is 2/3 and the point is 0, 7. Now, because x is 0, that indicates that 7 is in fact our y-intercept. And notice we only placed the slope in the position of the m and the y-intercept in the position of the b. Now, the x and y need to remain intact so that it represents the line has infinite amount of x and y points. The next type I'm going to show you is if you're given a slope and a point. If I give you a slope and a point, we actually have 3 of the letters of this 4. We have a y value. It is located in the y of your coordinate. So your y value is -4. You replace that with the y. Your m value is 1/3, which is your slope. Your x is right next to your m, so that always indicates that it's being multiplied when 2 letters are next to each other. So since your x is a 3, we put that right next to it, and it's going to multiply times the fraction. Now don't be afraid of the fractions. What we do is we just multiply the top of the fractions, and the bottom of the fraction just goes along for the ride. So 1 times 3 is 3, with the 3 on the bottom going along for the ride, plus b. Now 3 divided by 3 can simplify to a 1. Your next step is to get the b alone. In order to do that, I have to get rid of the 1. I can only do that by subtracting here. I carry down my b, and -4 minus 1 is -5. This is the second piece of my puzzle that I'm missing. The first piece was 1/3. Remember, we are putting our final answer by replacing the m, leaving the x and y intact, and replacing the b. Now you could have written plus -5, but this is a little bit better because it's cleaner and we don't have as many symbols to get confused on. Okay? Sometimes you're asked to find a line given 2 points. Now here you have a little bit more work. We have 6 and -13 and -2 and -5. When you're asked to find a slope from 2 points, there's a formula we use. It's y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That is a fancy way of saying subtract your y's, subtract your x's. A lot of you may remember me saying rise over run. But with rise over run, remember, to help you remember that the y's go on top, we say rise rhymes with wise. So rise, wise. You're going to choose a point to start off with after you find your slope. So to find my slope, I'm going to take the y value, the -5 minus, and then the -13. Earlier we used the negative number as our minus, but since this minus is part of the formula before we started, we must include both of them. So now we do our x's. So that's -2 minus 6. You have to start from the same point you started with your y's, or else you'll be off by a negative. And as a lot of you have recognized the hard way, when you're off by a negative, it can throw your whole problem off. So simplifying this, we have -5, a minus a -3 is, or -13 is actually plus 13, and -2 minus 6 is the same thing as plus a -6. So that leaves us with 8 over negative 8. Now that reduces quite easily to negative 1. That means that my slope, or my m, is negative 1. I now have one piece of my puzzle. If you remember from the last example, we chose a point. I'm going to choose 6, negative 13. It's okay if you would have chosen the other one. What this indicates is that you have an x and a y. Again, using your y equals mx plus b as your format, you're just replacing the pieces you know. Negative 13 is y. M is negative 1. X is 6 plus b. So now we have negative 13. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 6 plus b. In order to get rid of negative 6, I add 6. Always doing the inverse operation. Negative 13 plus 6 is negative 7. That is b. That brings us to the other piece of the puzzle. I put them together. Y equals negative 1, keeping the x there, minus 7. Again, the only thing I replaced in my final answer is my m and my b. Okay? Sometimes we are given a slope, but we're given it in a more of a confusing way. They may say, here's a point and there's a parallel line that is 2x plus y equals 5. Well, as soon as you see the word parallel, they are giving you a clue that you can find slope from this information. Parallel lines have the same slope. So really, keeping in mind the pieces of the puzzle we're always trying to find, and that is your m and your b. I can find my m by finding the slope. Now it's real easy to want to say 2. It's so tempting. But the only way you can identify a slope from an equation is if you isolate the y and it's in slope-intercept form. To move a term from one side of the equal sign to the other, we just subtract 2x. Add or subtract is the only way to do it. And then you have 5 minus 2x. This leaves the m position to negative 2. Now, since parallel lines use the same slope, I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to use that negative 2. I'm done with the parallel line information. I don't even need to look at it anymore. It's really easy for you guys to think, well, I already have b. It's right here. That is actually from the other equation that we already know the line to. So we are now going back to our x and y, plugging it back in, y equals mx plus b. So the y value will be 3, the m is negative 2, the x is negative 1, and once again we are left to solve for b. Two things next to each other get multiplied. I subtract 2. That leaves me with 1 equals b. I now have two pieces of my puzzle. My answer then is y equals negative 2 x plus 1. Again, keeping intact the x and y. Now a little more difficult one is if they say perpendicular to it. If they say perpendicular, you are still finding your slope, but when you find your slope, you are going to flip and change the sign. So if I look, I'm lucky enough that I have y equals mx plus b, so I can already identify that the slope in this equation is 3. Now if I were to make 3 a fraction, it would become over 1. Now how do you suppose I could flip that? Instead of 3 over 1, I could say my perpendicular slope is 1 over 3. Now I said change the sign, so since it was a positive here, I'm going to make it a negative over here. Okay, I'm sorry, I was going off the screen there a little bit. Now I take my slope as negative 1/3. I have my x, I have my y. I say -1 for my y, my m is -1/3, my x is 3 plus b. So now I have -1. Again, just multiply the top of your fractions, carry the denominator along. That cleans up very nicely again to -1. To isolate that, we have to add 1. Running out of room here. And we get 0 equals b in this one. That's okay. We can say y equals -1/3 x plus 0. But it's not really necessary. You still have your m, you still have your b. The 0 is really not helping anything. So if you want to clean it up even nicer, you could just say y equals -1/3 x. That is saying the exact same thing. Okay, we have 2 more special examples and then this video is over. I know this is a long video. So if you are looking for a horizontal line that passes through the point 2, 7, what you need to keep in mind is that horizontal lines have a 0 slope. We say why exercise when you could lay down. So keeping that in mind, y exercise when you could lay down means it's the y equals lines. That's opposite of our axes. Normally our y-axis is vertical, but we're talking about the tick marks on the line. So the y value here is 7. These are ones you just need to memorize. This is y equals 7. We don't need to write the m. We don't need to write the b. This is it. And if it's a vertical line, it goes up and down, and we say we exercise standing up. Now, this is just a cheesy little phrase to help us remember that this is x equals a number. Okay, this is y equals a number, and this one is x equals a number. So the vertical line here is x equals, and then we look, where does the x equal? The x equals 4. These 2 equations are very special. They're basically just the type that you have to memorize. Good luck on your problems.